Hi guys, so from now on I'm going to actually record my lessons and go through our notes like we would in class. I think that's going to be a little bit easier for you guys. And we just finished up chapter 6, you guys just took your test, and we're moving on to chapter 7. So chapter 7 is all about exponents and their different properties. So we're just going to take it one property at a time, like one property per day. So the first rule or property that we're going to go over is multiplying exponents with the same base. So something that's specific just to exponents, when you guys multiply with the same base, so for example, our base here would be 4. All right, we don't multiply the exponents or the base, okay? All we do is we take our exponents and we add them. All right, so if I had 4 to the 5th power times 4 to the 2nd, my base stays as 4, and I just add 5 plus 2 to give me 7. All right, so my final simplified answer would be 4 to the 7th. All right, and that same rule is going to apply with variables. But now remember, you only add the exponents of the same base. So for here, I have two different bases. I have an x base and I have a y base. All right, so I only want to add my x exponents together. So for my x, I have an x squared times x to the 4th. So 2 plus 4 would give me x to the 6th. Then I want to look at my y values. I have a y to the 3rd, and then I just have a y. So when we don't have any exponent there, I think we've talked about this before in class, we can assume that it's just a 1, right? So for my y's, I would have 3 plus 1, which is y to the 4th. And that's my simplified answer. All right, and that's the only rule that we're going to talk about today. All right, so I'm going to go through a bunch of practice problems just so you guys can see the process, and then I'm going to have you do a Google form. All right, so for number 1, I have an x squared times x to the 3rd. So I add my two exponents, and I get x to the 5th. Nice and easy. All right, and number 2, my base is a, so I have an a to the 9th times a, and once again, even though it's not written, we can assume it's a 1. And that's kind of a tricky part, guys. I want you to really pay attention to that. All right, so don't forget, if you just have a variable, all right, and there's no exponent, there is actually a 1 there, so you can't forget to add it. And that becomes a to the 10th. All right. And now number 3 is a little bit more involved because notice how we have numbers out in front of our base. So our base is still x. All right. So if I add my bases, I have x to the 2nd, x to the 5th, that would give me x to the 7th power. But whenever we have numbers out in front, okay, remember that we are multiplying here. So although we add our exponents, we do multiply the numbers out in front if they're there. So here we have a 4 times 3, which would give me 12x to the 7th. All right, so again, you multiply the numbers out in front, but you add the exponents. So for number 4, using that same idea, I want to multiply my numbers out in front. So I have a 3 times a 5 gives me 15. But then I want to add my exponents of the same base. So I have x and x, 6 plus 2, x to the 8th. All right, let's do one more like that. So again, I have my numbers out in front. So I want to multiply 5 times 6. That gives me 30. But then I want to add my exponents. So I have 2 plus 4, x to the 6th. All right. Now, number 6 is going to incorporate everything that we've talked about so far. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to multiply my numbers out in front. All right. So I have, this time I have a negative 4 times 3, which gives me a negative 12. And now I want to add the exponents of the same base. So a is the same base. So for the a term, I have a to the 3rd, a to the 2nd, 3 plus 2 is a to the 5th. All right, my second base here in green is b. And for that, I have just a b, which I'm going to write in as b to the first, and a b to the fifth. So that means I have b to the sixth. And I keep my different bases separate. So my a's and my b's, I add them together separately, and I keep them separate in my answer. All right, you only add exponents with the same base. So my final answer would be negative 12, a to the fifth, b to the sixth. All right, we have 3 more problems that we're going to talk about. Number 7 is very similar. So the first thing I want to do is multiply my numbers out in front. I have 8 times a negative 3, which gives me a negative 24. Be careful of those negatives. Now I want to add the exponents with the same base. First base is x to the 4th, x to the 4th. So I add 4 plus 4, x to the 8th. My second base that I have in here is a y. And I have y to the 2nd times y to the 9th. So 2 plus 9 gives me y to the 11th. And again, I keep my x and y separate in my answer. So my final answer would read negative 24, x to the 8th, y to the 11th. All right. Now, number 8, I have 3 terms that I'm multiplying, but that's okay. All right. We do the same process. So now, instead of multiplying 2 numbers that are out in front, I'm going to multiply 3 numbers that are out in front. So I have 2 times negative 5 times 3. So if I start with just 2 times negative 5, I would have negative 10. Negative 10 times 3 is negative 30. And now I have all the same base of y, so I'm just going to add all of my exponents. So I have 1 plus 2 plus 3, which gives me 6. So my final answer is negative 30 y to the 6th. I know it's kind of intimidating when you have multiple terms, but just take it step by step. Multiply all the numbers and then add all your exponents. All right, and number 9 is going to be the most challenging that we're going to get to. All right, so again, I have 3 terms. So I want to focus on the numbers out in front. Okay, now notice in the second term, there is no number. So technically, it's just a 1, which doesn't really change when we multiply. So I have negative 2 times 1, which gives me negative 2. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Now I want to add my exponents of the same base. So I have an x to the first, x to the first, x to the second. 1 plus 1 plus 2 gives me x to the 4th. And my final base is my y's. So I have a y to the first, y to the first, y to the third. So 1 plus 1 plus 3 gives me y to the 5th. So my final answer would be negative 6, x to the 4th, y to the 5th. All right, so this is our first rule of exponents. And I'm just going to go back up to the top, and we're going to talk about the 2 major parts of this. All right, so again, when we multiply powers with the same base, we want to add the exponents. So I want to add any exponents that have the same base, so x and x, y and y. And don't forget, if there are numbers out in front, you want to multiply those guys. All right, again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You will have a 5-question Google form that you're expected to hand in by midnight tonight. It's just practicing with these problems. And I hope that you all are doing well. Talk to you soon.